Well, welcome everybody. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to spend some time with us and go through our conference product offering. It's definitely a growing market sector for us. We're seeing a lot of municipalities and halls increase audio clarity within their facilities. So TOA does offer two different systems, a wired and wireless system, which we'll go through today. So target applications. Some ideas here of where our conference products can be used. From conference rooms to meeting rooms, boardrooms, AV presentation rooms, multi-purpose rooms, or educational facilities. I know in the Ontario market and other markets across Canada, town halls are a very popular place to see this product used. As I mentioned, we have two different lines. The 770 conference system is a wired system. So it's definitely a little bit more price effective than the wireless system. And one thing to keep in mind between wired and wireless are some pros and cons. I guess the biggest thing right off the bat with a wired system is, again, you have to run wires, so you're going to be cutting some holes in tables and things like that, and it's more of a permanent install solution. It is more price effective than a wireless solution. But again, if you're looking at a scenario where room layout may change in a town hall or something like that, from a round boardroom table to a C-type configuration, wireless may be the better way to go. That way you can easily reconfigure a room setting. But we'll start off by talking about the 770 system first off. One thing to remember about the 770 system is it's quite easy. It's very easy to install, it's very easy to use, and it's very easy to expand. We'll get into that further as we move along. Starting off in the line of the 770 series is our main controller, which is the TS770. So we'll kind of go through some of the front panel and rear panel features of this unit. Starting on the top left, we've got microphone input that allows you to add an external microphone to it. Below that is a mic input jack. Next to that, we have an auxiliary input for various maybe program information you want to put through there, or any other line level source that you want to be part of your presentation. Next over, we will have your line level control. So this controls the volume output from all the various delegates and chairman units around the table. Moving to the right of that, we have a mic limiter. So this is a switch. On this mic limiter, you can switch between 0, where your chairman has full control, or you also have a setting for 1, 3, and 6. This will basically tell you how many microphones or how many delegates can converse at one period of time. So how many live microphones you can have on one facility. Sometimes if there's going to be a lot of discussion between various parties, you'd want to open that up to maybe 3 or 6. But if you really want to limit it to 1 or 2, then you want to look at maybe, one mic open or something like that. The next switch over, we have our timeout switch. What this does is if someone does hit a microphone button, after a certain duration, it'll automatically cut off that mic. So this might come in handy if people are forgetting in a installation to turn off their mic, because there is buttons on the physical delegate and chairman unit that you need to turn on when you want to speak. So this will can either be set to off, so again, the mic, once you press it on, will always stay on, or you can have it at 20 seconds or 40 seconds. The final control on the front of the TS770 is the test mic on. So when you turn this on, it's going to give you feedback that everything is functioning properly, all the interconnects are correct, and that everything is ready to go before a meeting. Looking at the back of the central unit, we'll start again, I guess, at the left-hand side. We've got a power on and off button, very simple there. Then we have external 1 and 2. We have ins, outs, control. What this basically will allow you to do is, if you get into larger systems, you may want to link multiple systems together to have a very, very large system, depending on the size of the room. This will allow you to cascade multiple units together. It's something that, it's all dependent on the requirements. Most situations will not need this, but, if there are large rooms and large communication requirements, then this will allow you to expand upon the unit. Moving on from that, we have the station lines 1 and 2. So these are 2 feeds of the wire that actually goes from the central unit to each one of the delegate and or chairman units. So it's all run in kind of a daisy chain fashion, and we'll show you that as we move forward. So there are 2 potential ports to connect to. Next, we have our record outs over to the right, both RCA and 1/4 inch. So if they want to record, the meeting or anything like that, or they want to transmit that on the internet or something like that, this allows them to take a line level output from the meeting and send it to a desired destination. The last feature, on the bottom is your equalizer in and out. So this will allow you to go to an external DSP-based or analog-based equalizing system to maybe take care of some problems in the room. Maybe if there's some HVAC noise or something that you're finding that you're picking up through the microphones. So this allows you to contour, the sound according to the requirements of the room. So we'll take a look at, the chairman unit first. This is a TS771. Top end side, you can see a little connector, a little wire that comes into it. This is where you'd add extension cables down the road when you're connecting from one to the other. We'll go through that as we proceed. So it's very simple on this unit, and what's nice about it is its simplicity, is that it's not hard for someone to sit in front of this and really know how to control it. 2 buttons on the chairman unit is all you have. On the bottom, you'll see on the left-hand side, there's a priority button. So what that allows you to do is if you have other delegates speaking, you want to take control of the conversation of the meeting, you hit the priority button. It's going to automatically mute the other parties so you can regain control or ask the questions that need to be asked. To the right of that is your standard talk button for speaking to the group. And also there's a microphone LED button just above the priority and talk buttons that tells you that you are live. So it's kind of a visual indicator to say, okay, your talk button is pressed and you are being transmitted to the rest of the delegates. And on the very top of the unit is just a conventional, well, I guess it's not a standard XLR connector. It's a 4-pin XLR style microphone input. And there are options for microphones down the road. There is a short or a long style gooseneck microphone. I'll show you those as we proceed. Moving to the TS770, this is the delegate unit. So very similar to the chairman unit, you have your connector for all your cables that will daisy chain from one to the other. You have your microphone input, but you only have, basically the only difference is at the bottom you have 1 button for talk. So you don't have priority. When you have a delegate unit, you cannot take control of the system. If other people are speaking, you want to raise yourself above them, you do not have that functionality. So that's one thing to consider in designing a system is how many delegates and how many chairmen do you need, during, the function. As I mentioned, we have 2 microphone options, the TS773, which is a 14.5-inch gooseneck, as well as the TS774. This is a 20.4-inch microphone gooseneck. I would say a majority of the cases in my experience would call for the longer gooseneck microphone. Yes, of course, the shorter one may be more cost effective, but the advantage of a longer gooseneck microphone is that if during the meeting or on the table before you, the delegates and chairman may have paperwork that they're going through or laptops in the way, so it allows, if you have that product or papers in front of the delegate or chairman's unit, sometimes the microphone won't get that close to your mouth, and the closer it is to your mouth, the better the pickup and quality is going to be. So it allows you to push the delegate or chairman unit a little bit further away, and the microphone can still be closer to your mouth for speaking. So a lot of times the longer gooseneck is a better choice. These are condenser microphones. They're quite sensitive, unidirectional in their polar pattern. 4-pin XLR connector on these. There is a supplied windscreen. As well as on the top hand, just below the windscreen, on the top of the microphone, you'll notice a little light. There's a nice band light that will come on as well when you do press talk or priority override, just to let people know around the table or in the meeting who is speaking at a certain time. So it's a nice visual indication. One add-on you can add to the TS770 is the TS775 Remote Delegate Interface Unit. What this does will allow you to interact and potentially tie in a phone system, so a remote delegate that could call in on a phone system, or potentially link it up through a PC, maybe a web conference type of program where, again, you can allow the output from the PC to jump into this, onto the 775 unit and being transmitted to all the remote delegates and chairmen around the table. So you'll see in the front panel, left-hand side, we've got a telephone modular connection terminal to tie in a phone system. You have an option for A or B, the type of handset selection that you're using. There's also an external microphone input, a speaker output, from there. So again, you may want to connect the input from a PC for that particular jack. There's also a microphone input level control, speaker output level control, corresponding to the input beside it. There's also, again, a busy indicator if there's some kind of noise or some kind of issues within the system. There is also an auto manual for their talk switch. So it's pretty simplistic. It's something that once you set it up for a remote delegate conversation, it's pretty much set to go. And it does come in quite convenient, again, when you have someone that's not able to make a meeting or is out traveling, to allow them to be able to dial in and join the conference discussions remotely. Take a look at the back side of the unit here now. Not much to this. Again, there's a power cable. There's just one line connecting cable that goes to the central unit. And there is a control port there if you want to change certain configurations. Accessories to this particular system. There's two types and lengths of cables to interconnect between the various delegate units. There is the wire 772M, pretty straightforward, a 2-meter extension cable. So a lot of times 2 meters is a large enough distance to go from one chairman to the other chairman, delegate, from delegate to delegate. In areas where you may want to go from one table to another table, or maybe from the first delegate unit back to the central unit, you may need a larger cable. This is where the YR 770 comes in. This is a 10-meter extension cable. So these just link from one to the other. Looking at a typical installation, very, very, very simple to connect. You've got your central amplifier, central unit over to the right-hand side. Use one of those extension cables we mentioned prior to this slide. That goes into the first chairman or delegate unit, and then just an output from there. One to the next, in and out, in and out, in and out, right on down the line. So very simple, very easy to set up and configure. Here's an example of a larger system potentially. If you look on a single TS770 system, you're allowed a maximum of 70 chairman or delegate units per system, so a combination of those. Generally, that's going to allow you to do, handle most meeting, situations. But if an event should arise where you need more than that, you can cascade, as I said, the sensor unit on the left-hand side of the TS770s together. So by doing that, you're in essence adding the 70 and the 70 and the 70, so on and so forth. So you can get up to a maximum of 210 units per system. So it can get quite large if the requirements are there for it. So it could be very as simple as 6 delegates and 1 chairman, or you can get quite large. So it does allow you that flexibility, especially if in the initial stages that the requirements may only be maybe 35 units or 70 units, and down the road there needs a change. At least the system allows that expandability, which is nice. The next slide kind of shows how the TS775 remote delegate interface works. So you get your TS770 on the left-hand side, your daisy chaining to your various delegates and or chairman units. Then you go out of the last delegate or chairman unit via your expansion cable in the TS775. That ties it all together. And then from there, it's just straight audio inputs and outputs from a PC that could be linked, locally, and then through the internet from a remote location where your remote delegate could join the conversation. So it's very simple interactivity there. Same thing again with the phone system. Again, you're just allowing a phone paging CO out port from your telephone system straight into the TS775, and you could have basically someone conference call into the internal phone system and then into the TS775. From there, join the rest of the meeting. So again, very straightforward system, very easy to use. Again, the only deterrent from a wire system is running the wires below the table, potentially cutting holes, things like that. But in some instances where again the room is not going to change and they've already cutting some holes for network drops and local power, then they add another jack or a porthole that you can go through the table. May not be such an issue at all. Here's a look at an even larger per se system, pulling everything together. We've got a remote office calling in through a CO line, through a telephone coupler. That's going to go into the TS770 head unit. We're going to take an audio output from the TS770 head unit and record that, whether it's on a PC or mini disc or some kind of portable media. And then from there, we're going to, you have your chairman up front, beginning at the front of the room, and then just linking, daisy chaining in whichever fashion makes more sense in the installation to all the other remote, the delegates locally in that room. So very, very, very simple to configure. Next, we're going to move on to a TS 800 and 900 series. In my experience, it seems that, a lot of facilities are going more and more to the wireless. It is a lot more easy, like I mentioned earlier, to configure room. Requirements change at any point, especially in town halls where if different mayors come in, they sometimes would like, the configuration to change depending on their needs and likes. So again, the system can easily pick up your stations and move them around. Sometimes as well, in a town hall, you'll have closed meetings and open meetings. So that's where that configuration can change when you're bringing the public into here and have to maybe utilize space a little bit more efficiently. The wireless systems can be quite accommodating in that respect. So some of the benefits with the 800-900 series, it's an infrared-based system as opposed to RF. There's multiple benefits of infrared in this application. The first benefit is security. No one has an IR-based receiver radio like they may have for an RF-based system that they can listen in on a meeting and pick up what's going on. So you get that high security there. Then in addition to that is IR does not penetrate through walls. So it's not transmitting outside of your meeting room, to the rest of the facility. On the same note, if you have multiple meeting rooms or boardrooms where you'd like to utilize this technology, there's no cross-interference, no frequency correlation that you have to worry about because it is confined to the rooms. You don't get crosstalk to adjacent rooms or anything like that. So that's very advantageous. The other advantage, too, is you're not susceptible to outside noise. So again, with RF, who knows what is transmitting in a certain area. If it's a metropolitan downtown area, it could be quite congested when it comes to RF noise. So the last thing you want is during a meeting, someone else transmitting is coming through your system. In an RF system, there is a potential for that. In an infrared system, there is not. It's not being transmitted through the wall, so you're very safe when it comes to that. So very advantageous to go with an infrared-based system when it comes to wireless. Again, benefits, easy installation. No need to connect conference units. They are powered by batteries. There are options as we go along here for local hardwired AC if need be, but majority of the way they're operated is fully wired. So you just pick it up, put it where you want it to be, and that's it. Again, installation side of things. When it comes to installation and installing this product in a facility, the only installation really comes down to the infrared transmitters and receivers. That's the only hardwired really connect. We'll cover that further on, but it's just the transceiver going straight back to a central unit. So when it comes into hardwired versus wireless, sometimes the savings in the labor may make the wireless more advantageous, although the product itself is a little bit more inexpensive than the wired. So something to consider when looking at either system. Some more benefits. Difference here between the 800 and 900 series is the 800 series will allow up to 64 units, delegates or chairmans per system. In the TS 900, up to a max of 96. As I mentioned earlier, it's very easy to relocate and move around, especially if participants where they sit that way. Clear sound amplification recording. The chairman and delegate units have a built-in monitor speaker, and I didn't mention that earlier. That holds true on the 770 system. Is that each chairman has their own local microphone with local speaker with a volume, so they can contour that to their own specific needs. Especially if it comes into someone being hearing impaired or something like that, some kind of deficiency that way, they can turn it up a little bit if they can't hear. But it's definitely advantageous to have a nice, clear, flat response speaker right in front of you. Also, another benefit is that you are allowed to have a recording from the central unit, as with the 770s, to record certain meetings or transmit them or archive them, so on and so forth. Some more benefits, scalability for a broader area. Up to 4 infrared transceivers and you can see them on the right-hand side. Those would be the dome-style things. On the right-hand side, they're located up on the ceiling. So 4 of those can be directly connected to a unit. Up to 16 transceivers can be connected if you wish to expand the system or the room is a little bit larger, and you would need some distributors that way. So think of the distributors almost like cable distributors that you're having, 1 in, 4 out. It's very similar to that kind of principle. Just you're not sending RF and things like that. You're sending infrared technology through there. That'll allow you up to 16 infrared transceivers in an installation. Distributors are needed to connect 5 or more infrared transceivers. So just keep that in mind. Once you hit that magic number of 5, then you have to start looking at getting a distributor into your system. Another benefit, and this is a new feature, and we were actually just made aware of this over the last couple weeks, which is a nice addition to the system, is PC controllability and configuration of the system. So personally, I haven't had a lot of time to play around with this, but our tech department did provide this nice screenshot of the PC software that is available by request. So it does not ship with the product, but if you do require the PC software, our tech team or your RSMs can orchestrate that and get you that into your hands. But as you can see on it, you can lay out in the center of the screen, your various delegates. You can, put a name to them. You can put a number to them, so you can basically have exactly where people are supposed to sit, who they are. Where that comes into play is if we look at the function of voting, and we'll touch that in the 900 system as we go through it. But you're allowed in the 900 system to add voting, and maybe you want to correlate, who voted for what certain, whether it's a rule, a bylaw, or something like that. This unit will tally it up. Give you information on the names and which delegate gave you that information. You can start the voting from here. You can put time restraints on some of the speeches. So it's a nice user interface to have on a PC located within the meeting room. So this is something new. I don't have a lot of information about it, but I'm sure as time rolls out, we'll probably have a webinar on this software because it's a nice add-on. So we'll start looking at the chairman station in the both the 800 system and the 900 system. So I mentioned on the earlier slide that there are voting options. I guess this is a nice point to kind of mention that. When you move from the 800 system up to the 900 system, you'll notice if you look on the units themselves, the right-hand side, right above, I guess, the pink and blue button, you'll see an additional 3 buttons. This will be voting. So the 900 system adds voting capabilities to your functions. So again, if it's certain bills, bylaws, whatever it may be, and you want, have to have, the delegates or certain delegates vote on it, then again, you initiate the vote from the chairman's area or from the PC or from the central unit, and then again, it will go out to all the delegates, and the delegates would pick 1, 2, or 3, or A, B, and C. That will be tallied up by the head end central unit. It can be displayed either on the PC software, or there's also connectivity via RS-232 to an AMX or Crestron, and codes can be written so that would come up on a touch screen or something like that to give the information on the vote. So that's one difference. An additional difference as we go into it, but I'll make you aware of it right now, is you'll notice on the TS901, the right-hand side, you'll see a monitor selector key, main and sub. What that is offers you a translation channel. So the 900 series offers you almost like an A and a B feed. So again, if there's a presenter, maybe it's a function or a meeting going on in French and English, or French and Spanish, whatever the 2 languages may be, it'll allow an interpreter to jump in on the system, translate English over to French, and each delegate can pick what feed they want. They can either pick, and listen through the speaker, or they could have an earpiece or headphone that can go into and connect to them. So that's really the main differences beyond the capacity between 800 and 900. Is that the 900, again, adds voting capabilities and a translation channel. So going through some of the other features on it, again, on the conference system, there is an indicator light on the Goose Deck microphone that lights up when you're speaking. You have the monitor speaker down below. There is a volume control located on each unit as well. It's not mentioned here. You have on the left-hand side, you get the chairman station. So actually, they're both chairmen. So you'll see that pink button, which is a priority override that'll take hold of the conversation. To the right of that is a standard talk key. Press to talk, and it's maintained. and to the right of that you have a headphone jack. So again, if there are people that are present that are hearing impaired, you could add an external, headphone set to offer that form of comfort. The right-hand side, virtually the same. You just add the voting buttons, and you also add that control for which feed you want, the main feed or the sub feed. Moving forward to the Delegate, very similar feature set. Again, the only difference between the two of them is the 902. The TS902 offers the monitor selector key, so main, sub, and the voting capabilities. The only thing it loses from the chairman is that priority button. But again, notice how very streamlined and simplistic it is. When you put this in front of someone, there's no learning curve. There's a button, hit the button, it lights on. There's two indicators that tell you that it's on, and it's very easy to use. One other thing to note is that there's various configurations of blinking that come into play on the indicator on the gooseneck microphone. Depending on the length of the blink, I'm not sure which is longer or shorter, but that is in the manual. Is one blink could be telling you, okay, the battery life is getting low, so you may want to look at replacing the battery. Or if there's some kind of interference or some kind of issue in transmission, there's another sequence of blinks that can come out of that as well. Just so you're a visual indication when a meeting is going on that there may be a potential issue, and you may want to, change out a battery, the batteries during a break or something like that. Again, two options of microphones, gooseneck microphones. The 903 is 14.5 inches, and the 904 is 20.5 inches. Again, I'm impressed. A lot of times the longer microphone is the way to go. They are condenser, as with the 770 microphones. We've got condenser microphones, unidirectional. You do have that indicator ring along the top of the microphone. Nice frequency response from 100 hertz to 13K. Balanced XLR. It is a stainless steel gooseneck, so it's quite durable. Overall two selections there moving forward with the microphones. Keep that in mind, when you are quoting or specifying, is that the microphones do not come with the chairman or delegate units. They are separate parts. Looking at the controller on the TS800, so this again is a non-voting, non-translation unit. It's a little blurry, I apologize for the picture, but going through some of the functions, you've got a button on the front that is installation check, so it's got to verify that it's communicating with all the different delegate units. I don't get into it here, but you do have to assign the chairman and delegate units on a certain channel so it can basically know what is what. Think about it when it comes into voting. It has to know, the central unit, who's voting and what way they're voting. So there is some channel assignment on the bottom of the delegate and the chairman units. So this basically sends some information out and makes sure that everything is properly functioning. You have another selecting switch for number of speakers on again, like you do with the TS770. You have a speech system selection key. You also have, as the 770, the auto mic off key. So again, various settings if you want the microphone to turn off after a certain duration. You have a microphone auxiliary adjust selection, so if you want an external microphone, external source into the system, you can control that audio input as well. You have an overall volume control, as well as a headphone adjustment selection at the central unit location. Connections on the back, we've got on the left-hand side, you're going to see the infrared transmitter receivers. So they're a B and C type of connection. Going the coax cable. So as I mentioned earlier, the maximum transceivers you can connect to a central unit is 4. Anything beyond that, you have to add a distributor in there to allow you to split out to multiple transceivers. But again, if your requirement is only anywhere from 1 to 4, then you don't need those distribution units. You've got auxiliary microphone inputs. Just above there, you've got an aux and a microphone. You have your RS-232 control for PC control, as well as for tying into automation platforms, like I mentioned, AMX or Crestron. On the right-hand side, you've got RCA recorded outputs, and quarter-inch. And there's also a chime feature included in this as well. Have a drink of water there. Moving to the 900 system controller. Very similar feature set. Looking at what is different, you're going to see the voting section kind of on the left-hand side. So there's a button there to start the voting, and then there's an LED readout to basically tally up the votes and give you a feedback that way. Again, in addition to that, you can also get that feedback from a software, or again, writing code and having that come up on your automation panel or something like that. Additionally, on the system, I should mention as well, as you'll see, you have main audio, mic 1, mic 2, main audio. You have mic audio, sub-audio adjustment, as well as auxiliary third. So it allows you a little more flexibility with routing signal through the system. Maybe you want to tie into an external phone system. If so, then the 900 system is also your selection. That 800 will not allow you to do that if you want to tie in maybe a Polycom or some kind of system that has, you add the extra module and want an audio input and output. If that is the case, you would have to use a TS900 system that allows you to basically pull out some of the audio so it's not regurgitating through the system, causing electronic feedback. So that's another, I guess, feature that is on the 900, in addition to the voting and the translation channel. But other than that, pretty straightforward for the rest of controls as compared to the TS800. Looking at the back of the unit, again, very simple because you have some additional inputs. You're going to see auxiliary 1, 2, as well as mic 1 and mic 2 there, actually 3 auxiliaries, which is different than the 800 system. But other than that, you do have the line out here, which does have a mix cut. That comes in when you're tying into potentially a Polycom system or some kind of additional phone system that you want to tie into this unit. So other than that, it's very straightforward. You have 4 infrared transceiver connections. You have your record output as well as your RS-232 control. Moving on to the transceivers. So these are transceivers. They transmit and receive information. There's 2 versions. There's the TS905, and then there is the TS907. So they operate on 20-volt DC. That is supplied via the 75-ohm coax cable that connects to them. So it's very simplistic, just one coax cable to each unit. They could be wall or ceiling mounted. Generally, wall or ceiling is where you're going to want to put these, directly over, where the delegates and chairman units are going to be. So it has a nice spread down below. There is power LED on there just in case there's some issue. If maybe there is construction in the venue or maybe a wire get cut, it's going to give that visual notice that that transceiver is not functioning. Therefore, you can pick up on that before maybe an issue during a meeting or something like that. Coverage distance per transceiver is usually on an average 21 feet, 6 meters. And the breakdown between the TS905 and TS907, TS905 is a wide area coverage. So it's 150 degrees vertical by 360 degrees around. So generally that's using your conventional 8-foot, 9-foot ceilings. Sometimes you'll go in an instance where, again, it's a very high ceiling. That's where the TS907 comes in. So this is more of a narrow focus, 90 degrees dispersion by 360 degrees. So if it's a high ceiling, and again, if it's if you got a high ceiling and you go with that wider coverage area, you're going to lose a lot of the strength through the distance. So going with the narrower coverage, it's got to spread by the time it gets down to the delegate area, so it's a better choice on the higher ceilings. Some examples of the coverage. Again, as I mentioned, the 905 is used in rooms with lower ceilings where water coverage is wanted and required. The TS907, again, higher ceilings, higher powered, tighter coverage between the two. So looking at the chart here, and this chart is actually taken from the manual. So there's a lot of good information if you go to our website, toacanada.com. You can always go to the right-hand side, and there's a TOA resource center where you can type in the part number, and it'll give you all the various information for this product, manuals, cookbooks that can help you in the design. I think it does come up in addition to what you're learning at this during this webinar. But this is taken directly from that manual. So if you look at various ceiling heights, from 2.5 to 3 meters, you're getting about a 7-meter coverage. As you jump up to 3.5 to 4 meter height, you're getting about 6.5 meter coverage per transceiver, and that relates to the 905. When you get a little bit higher, you're looking at 5 meters to up to 7 meters, getting around 6 meter coverage there. So as you're getting, although you're getting higher, the difference between the coverage angle of the TS905, 907, you're still getting around that 6 meter coverage angle, or I guess area. So we look at the coverage in more of a graphical, real life snapshot. We've got the transceiver located on the ceiling, and a conventional ceiling height of 2.5 to 4.5 meters. So again, it's going to give you a 360 degree coverage, 150 degrees spread, right, directly below the transceiver. So you're getting a radius of around 6.5 to 7 meters coverage directly below this transceiver. So that they're in that area is where you want your delegates and where you want your chairman units to be, inside that radius. Looking at the TS907, again, a higher ceiling we're dealing with here, anywhere from 5 to 7 meters. Again, it's going to be a little bit of a narrower dispersion angle, but because of the drop in the distance from the ceiling to where the delegate area would be, where they'd be transmitting, you're still going to get about 6 meters there. So it's just focusing that signal a little bit stronger directly below to take care of the distant issues. Our transceiver wiring. This is a very big point to understand. And if there are ever any issues during installation of this particular product, it's because this rule of thumb is not followed. And that is the cable length between each infrared transceiver and the central unit must be equal. So whatever arm it is, whatever per se, let's say you've got as simple as 2 transceivers going directly back from the room back to the central unit location. If it's 100-foot length on the first transceiver, it's going to be 100 feet on the second transceiver. Although maybe distance is shorter or something like that, you have to take into consideration losses and that through the cable, and therefore the distances have to be the same. So again, in that situation, if potentially it was 100-foot distance from one transceiver to the central unit and 50 feet from the second transceiver to the central unit, you would have to coil up maybe an additional 50 feet on that short run and make it equal. That is the key. Anything beyond that will start to degrade the signal moving forward. So if you look on, I guess, the second diagram there, we'll show you an optimal scenario. So this is going again with 16, so a full-blown system. So you've got the central unit going out to a distributor, so 1 in, 4 out, and that each 4 out is going out to its own distributor, which is going to allow, again, 1 in, 4 out. So that gives you your total of 16. Each one of those quadrants has to be the same cable length, adding up all those parts. So if you look at that equation, L equals A plus B equals A plus C plus D, that's where it comes from. These all have to add up to be equal. And a lot of times that comes, in order to do that, you're just calling up little chunks of wire, either at the head end or somewhere above a drop ceiling, something like that. But definitely pay attention to that part of the installation. And that's virtually the only tricky thing when it comes to installing that, is following that one rule. Showing a little bit of coverage pattern with the IR transceivers. This is a conference room, 30 meters by 30 meters. So when the ceiling height is lower than 7 meters, it's preferable to arrange the units about 9 meters apart from each other, as shown in this figure. So you get a very nice, strong coverage area of the 30 by 30 meters. There you got a little bit of overlap in this scenario, but it's better to overlap than underlap and have potential dead spots in the transmission of the information, the IR. This is also, again, taken from the manual. But don't hesitate if you do have a room you're unsure, what transceivers to use or how many you need. Definitely contact your local RSM or call in to our TOA technical department. It's very easy, they can easily say, okay, this is your room, this is your height, and tell you exactly, how many transceivers would be needed in that area. And as a rule of thumb, sometimes it may be advantageous to add an extra one just to make sure you are covered. If something changes or again, maybe there's some light coming in to the system, which I'll talk about in a minute. That's a typical coverage of an area. So let's say we've got a conference room, it's just a round table or something like that. So, all the chairmen and delegate units are arranged around a central table, and when in this case, only one, usually, depending on the size of the table, one transceiver would be needed. So again, we're talking, an area of 14 meters by 14 meters. So again, if that was a table, you're seeing the coverage area, that's where your table would be. Then as long as the delegates or chairmen are all around underneath that area, then one transceiver is all to be required to give you adequate and proper coverage. Before we go on the accessories, I did mention one thing that on the prior slide is about sunlight. And definitely with IR, there's issues, can be potential issues with direct sunlight. So again, in the room, if there are windows all the way around and the sun is, at a certain angle where it's, flooding the room at a certain time, you could run into issues. It's something to definitely pay attention to. To solve those issues, it could be a matter of additional transceivers to give you stronger coverage, or it may be a matter that there needs to be some kind of window treatment. Usually there'll be blinds or something that may need to be drawn down at certain times of the day if there's direct flooding of light. Some attention needs to be paid to ultraviolet lighting, which may mean a few extra transceivers. The only other issue you could run into with infrared technology is plasmas, because plasmas actually transmit frequencies out from the screen that can potentially block IR. So there's only two options. If a room does have plasmas, there is a coating that can go on to the screen, a plastic film that can reduce that, or it may be projectors or an LCD may be a better solution. Not so much of an issue right now. We're finding that most of the time in these type of meeting rooms or boardrooms, it's either a projector or an LCD TV anyway, and these are not going to cause any issues with the IR. But one thing to keep in mind, probably light may be the more of a common one to just keep an eye out on and be aware of, certain times of day it's going to be used and where the sun is positioned according to the windows in the facility. Some accessories to add on to the unit. These are all separate parts needed to be added on to the full system. There is the AD0910. So this is an AC hardwired power supply for the delegate units. So not so common because you get usually about 6 to 8 hours, I believe, out of a charge on the battery. So that's usually enough for any meeting. But if you want to have a couple of these, just in case something does happen and during a meeting, quickly add some power. It's an option there. So that'll work for all of the delegate and or chairman units. We have the BP900, which is the battery. Battery sits right below and clicks in nice and easy in the bottom of the delegate and chairman units, so it's easy to pull out and put back in for charging purposes. Then we also have the BC900, which is the battery charger. So it can handle up to 8 batteries at the same time. And charge time is about 5 hours. So keep that in mind. To have that properly prepared before a meeting. If how long the system was used prior to the current meeting, it's good to keep track of that. I find a lot of facilities will keep kind of log sheets of how long the system was used, because it comes down to battery life as well. The system's only been used for a meeting of an hour duration or 2 hours duration. It does not make sense potentially to recharge and cycle through the batteries. The more you cycle through any battery, the lower the life expectancy is of it, or could be of it. So keeping a log sheet of how the usage of the batteries is a good way to know, okay, these have to be charged before this meeting, or no, we are good to go here. So a little bit of a tip that might help in the use of the charging of the batteries and the system itself. Additional accessories, we've got the MBTS900. So this is rack mount ears for the central unit to go back away into a rack, so you can mount that up off a table if you have a rack locally that you're putting the rest of your equipment in. And below this we have the 2 options for distributors. So we have the YW1022. This is a 1-in, 2-out splitter. And also we have the 1024 distributor, which is a 4-way splitter. So the 4-way splitter will give you your maximum of 16 transceivers per system. We've got a few system kind of diagrams. These were pulled from the cut sheets, so again, they are a little blurry. I do apologize for that. But if you look at a standard conference system, looking from the inside out, we've got our central unit there in the center. To the left of that, we have a potential recording device to record the meeting. We got an external wired microphone if that's required. Sometimes that external wired microphone might be in a town hall, maybe positioned on a podium where anybody from, any citizens could come up and voice their concerns to, to the council or something like that. Maybe it's a goose egg microphone or a wireless microphone. It'll allow you to connect that to the system as well and transmit that to all the delegate and chairman participants. And we also have source equipment if you choose to have any kind of source going through that. Maybe there is a presentation and you have video as well as maybe an output from a PowerPoint. You could funnel that through the central unit as well. To the right of that, we've got our distributors. So again, in this particular scenario, we've got the YW1024. That's going to additional YW1024s, which can go up to a maximum of 16 transceivers. So depending on the room requirements, we'll tell you what you need in respect to the transceivers and or distributors. And down at the bottom, we've got our chairman unit and delegate units, so up to a maximum of 64 units within those two parts. So very simple, the up and running is very easy. The only wiring, again, is, between the central unit and the transceivers and any local input sources or recording outputs that you want to tie into the central unit. Here's the TS900 again. This would be, a bilingual conference system. As I mentioned earlier, this will allow you the secondary channel of translation. So again, if we look at the central unit, you've got a PC connected to it. You have your recording equipment, as well as an output to a PA amplifier if you want, speakers over the audience or a little bit of additional sound reinforcement. That's a non-issue here. On the bottom left as well is where you'd have the interpreter connect to the system. So you'd have some local microphones there, as well as playback speakers so they could hear, if a delegate was speaking in French, then again, translator's going to hear what he said and translate it back through the microphone in English and vice versa from English to French. So that's how that works. They'd usually be placed in a separate room during the translation process. Same scenario when it comes to the transceivers, going into the distributor onto the various transceivers depending on the requirements. And then you have a breakdown of, your chairman and delegate units. But again, you can get up to 96 units, I believe. It's a little blurry. I apologize. On this particular unit, so 96 delegate chairman combinations.